When you hunt monsters, you have to learn to think like them. It's a chilling truth, but it's the core of what we do at the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. We don't just look at evidence left at a crime scene, we look for the evidence left inside the killer's head. The most shocking thing isn't the brutality of their crimes, though that is horrifying. The most shocking thing is how ordinary they can seem. They are your neighbors, your coworkers, the person you pass on the street. This ability to blend in, to wear a mask of normalcy, is their greatest weapon. They live a double life, and our job is to peel back the layers to see the predator hiding underneath. Understanding this duality is crucial. A serial killer doesn't just snap one day, it's a long, slow burn. Criminal profiling is not a parlor trick, or a psychic reading. It is a methodical, analytical process. We use it when a crime is particularly bizarre or a part of a series and local law enforcement has hit a wall. A profile is an educated guess about the type of person who would commit such a crime. We look at the crime scene as if it were a canvas. Victim chosen, weapon used, control exerted, things done before, during the murder, after the murder. These are all brushstrokes. They tell us a story about the killer's personality, his habits, his background, and his motivations. It's a behavioral composite, not a physical one. One of the most fundamental traits we see in serial killers is a profound lack of empathy. They are simply incapable of feeling or understanding the pain of others. To them, other people are not human beings with hopes, dreams, families. They are objects, props to be used for their own gratification. This emotional void allows them to commit horrific acts without a shred of remorse or guilt. When we interview them in prison, they often talk about their victims in a detached, impersonal way. It's as if they are describing a broken toy, not a life they have destroyed. This emotional disconnect is the foundation upon which all their other pathologies are built. This lack of empathy is often paired with a powerful sense of narcissism entitlement. These offenders believe they are special, smarter, superior to everyone else, including law enforcement. They have grandiose fantasies of power, control, domination. The act of killing is the ultimate expression of this fantasy. In that moment, they have absolute control over another human being's life and death. This feeling is intoxicating to them, a high they will chase again and again. It's this arrogance that often leads to their downfall as they start to believe they are too clever to ever be caught. Many serial killers are master manipulators. They can be charming, polite, seemingly normal on the surface. No one is born a monster. The path to becoming a serial killer almost always begins with a damaged and abusive childhood. When we delve into the backgrounds of these offenders, we find a recurring pattern: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. Their early home life is often chaotic and violent. They learn from a young age that the world is hostile and that violence becomes an acceptable way to exert control. They are often victims before they become victimizers. We often see three key behavioral red flags: the homicidal triad, animal cruelty, fire starting, a fascination with destruction and power, persistent bedwetting, a sign of deep anxiety and humiliation. When these behaviors appear together, it's a child in severe distress. Beyond behaviors, social isolation is common, odd, withdrawn, aggressive. They retreat into a rich, detailed fantasy life. The role of the mother is often significant. Many have poor or abusive relationships with their mothers, domineering, distant, neglectful. That fractured bond can produce deep hatred or fear of women. Understanding that dynamic explains victim selection. Victims are often stand-ins for the original source of rage. A serial killer's crime is not, a spontaneous act of rage. It's actually a carefully choreographed performance. It begins long before the attack. The first phase, the fantasy phase, the seed of the crime. He spends countless hours, sometimes years, perfecting details in his mind. Type of victim he wants, how he'll capture them, how he'll get away with it, what he'll do to them, how he'll get away with it. Next, the trolling or hunting phase. He actively searches for a victim who fits the template. He may cruise certain neighborhoods, frequent specific bars, drive along lonely highways, looking for the right person at the right moment. This requires patience and discipline, observing potential targets, learning their routines, looking for a moment of vulnerability. He might pretend to be a police officer or fake an injury to lure someone. Ted Bundy is a classic example. From passive dreamer to active predator, the sense of power is overwhelming and addictive. Final phases, the murder and the disposal. After the murder, the totemic phase. He takes a souvenir, a piece of jewelry, a driver's license, a lock of hair, something to relive the crime. At every crime scene, a killer leaves behind two things: his modus operandi, or MO, and his signature. It is absolutely critical to understand the difference between them. The MO is practical. It's what the offender does to successfully commit the crime and get away. The signature is not what they do to commit the crime, it's what they do to fulfill their psychological needs. It's the unique ritual or fantasy they act out. This signature behavior doesn't change from crime to crime because it's the entire reason they are killing in the first place. It's what we look for to link cases and understand the offender. Our work starts with a deep dive into the case files. Autopsy reports, police reports, crime scene photographs. We want to see the crime through the eyes of the victim, the police, and most importantly, the offender. What choices did he make? Why this victim? Why this place? Why this time? We ask questions that go beyond the who and what. We focus on the why. Every action is a clue to the fantasy he is living out. It's like learning a new language where the vocabulary is violence and the grammar is compulsion. Decoding the signature is the key to understanding the offender, his motivations, and the core of his compulsion. This is how we link cases that seem unrelated. The case of the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, is a perfect example of how profiling works in a long and difficult investigation. For nearly 2 decades, a killer terrorized the Seattle area, preying on prostitutes, preying on young runaways. The bodies of his victims were found discarded in wooded areas, often in clusters. The sheer number of victims was staggering, and the investigation was one of the largest and most complex in American history. Local law enforcement was overwhelmed, and they needed a new way to look at the case. They needed to understand the man behind this horrific series of crimes, not just the evidence he left behind. Our profile of the Green River Killer was built from the crime scenes. The victims were all vulnerable women, easy targets he could control. He dumped their bodies in remote, often trash-strewn areas, which told us he viewed them as disposable. We predicted he would be a white male who was familiar with the area, possibly with a job that gave him a reason to be on the roads at odd hours. Ridgway fit the profile remarkably well. He was a truck painter who had worked and lived in the area for years. He knew the back roads and isolated spots intimately. He was questioned early on but passed a polygraph. He was hidden in plain sight, a seemingly ordinary man with a dark secret. The breakthrough finally came with advances in DNA technology. A sample taken from Ridgway in the 1980s was eventually matched to evidence from several victims. When he was finally arrested, he confessed to dozens of murders. A profile is a roadmap, not a magic wand. Its primary function is to help law enforcement use their resources more effectively. Instead of searching for a needle in a haystack, we give them the specifications of the needle: age, race, employment status, criminal record, military service. We might suggest he lives or works near the dump sites, or that he has a job that gives him a reason to be on the roads at odd hours. This doesn't magically solve the case, but it narrows the pool of suspects. It gives investigators a new direction and a renewed sense of purpose. It helps them look for the right person, not just any person. By prioritizing, we can eliminate the noise and focus on likely suspects. Studying the darkest corners of the human psyche is not just about catching killers. Understanding the path that leads to violence so that we can, hopefully, learn to prevent it. Identifying at-risk children and getting them psychological help, intervention and community mentorship is our best defense. Profiling teaches us methods killers use, ploys and ruses, so we can teach situational awareness and practical safety. Stripping away the myth, they are not gods, they are just men. When we see them for what they are, broken, cowardly human beings, we take away their power. The greatest lesson from the abyss is empathy. For the victims, behind every case file is a human being whose life was stolen. We step into the darkness to find the truth, to give a name to the monster, and to ensure that victims and families receive justice. This is what drives us forward.